towards the middle. Yes, just a bit up. Yep. No, bring it more towards the middle. Yeah, that's fine. Yep. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الصادقين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال يا نوح إنه ليس من أهلك إنه عمل غير صالح. The first of our salawat in honor of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. The second in honor of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. The third with your loudest voices in honor of Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. The story of the relationship of Prophet Nuh and his son is one of the most fascinating stories in the Holy Quran. A story from which many lessons can be learnt and many examples can be derived. And a story which at the same time allows us to look at the position of children in Islamic thought and the rights of children within the religion of Islam. For as we know, every human being aspires one day to have a child in their life. A child is seen to continue the legacy of that particular human being, continue their standpoints and their principles, someone who they could revere and be proud of, someone who will protect that which they have accumulated within their life. And therefore we find that it's an ecstatic moment when a human being is aware of the news that they are about to have a child. You find that many emerge with a natural feeling within them that this child is like their heart walking outside their body. And that child represents the movement and the continuation of the generations of that family. And therefore, in order for us to gauge that ecstatic feeling, there is an understanding that that feeling doesn't just come on the first child. It may be your first child or it may be your fifth child. The ecstasy that is there can never be measured. And you find that you are able to gauge this feeling in two ways. Either by looking at someone when they receive news of a child coming to their family, or by looking at the reaction of someone who loses a child. When you look at the both of them, you find very clearly that there is an ecstasy which is quite unbelievable. As an example, when you look within the Holy Quran, in Surah 51, verse 29 of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala discusses the marriage of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam to his wife Sarah. As we know, Sarah could not give him any children for a number of years, and therefore he went on to marry Hajar. Hajar gave him Ismail, and then later on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewarded Sarah. The Quran quite beautifully describes Sarah's reaction when she is informed of the news that she's about to give birth to a child. Why? Because she was at an old age, and therefore there was no more of an expectation that a child would be born to her. And the Quran says, فَصَكَّتْ وَجْهَهَا وَقَالَتْ عَجُوزٌ عَقِيمٌ. She slapped herself viciously. فَصَكَّتْ وَجْهَهَا. She slapped her face viciously and she said, me, an old woman? Here the idea is that emotion is not condemned. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says there are certain emotional reactions which are natural. They cannot be condemned. When this mother at this old age heard the news of a child, of a baby that was to come in her life, there was an ecstasy which was something quite unbelievable. Likewise, if you compare that with our Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. When he lost his sons, Qasim and Ibrahim, he lost them at a relatively young age. And when you hear his reaction at losing those sons, you hear him saying, for example, that the amount of emotion that losing my sons has got me is even stronger than the mountains which the Arabs see. Likewise, he said, the eyes are tearful and the heart is sorrowful when I have lost these two children of mine. It goes to show you that there is a natural expression of a feeling when a human being has a child and when a human loses a child. And that's why you find a child is seen as one of the forms of sustenance in the religion of Islam. The word for sustenance in Islam is the word rizq. Many times when we hear this word, automatically we think rizq means money. Whenever you tell anyone, may Allah increase your rizq, you automatically assume it's money. No. Your wealth is a form of rizq. Your health is a form of rizq. Your education is a form of rizq. And having children is a form of rizq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because there are many in the world today who do not have a child. However much they try, they can go to the best doctors in the world. They try and they try and they try, yet they find that unfortunately they cannot have any children. And even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has tested some of His greatest servants with the fact that they only had one child in their life, no more. As in people like Prophet Zakaria alayhi salam, him and his wife had to wait years before they had a child, until eventually they had the Prophet Yahya. It goes to show you that even those couples who are trying for children and cannot have a child should never despair of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the same Lord who is able to give these two a child at old age, the same Lord who is able to give Ibrahim and Sarah a child, the same Lord can give you a child as well. A child is a form of rizq, and therefore you find on the third level within the Quran, we find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when talking about children in the Quran, talks about them in two ways. The first way in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes a child is in the verse in the Quran in Surah 18 verse 46. Al-mal wal-banun zinat al-hayat al-dunya. Your wealth and your children are a beautification in this world in which you live. In the idea that zina is that which beautifies you, your wealth should beautify you, and your children are a form of beautification. As in the Arabs used to pride themselves on walking and having their children alongside them. To the extent one narration says, there was a man who was walking, he had 10 children in front of him, 10 to his right, 10 to his left, and 10 behind him. When some said to him, what are these? He replied, the 10 in front of me are my children. The 10 to my right are my sister's children. The 10 to my left are my brother's children. And the 10 behind me are my cousin's children. The Arabs used to pride themselves that the child is an adornment in this world. And so the Quran said, Al-mal wal-banun zinat al-hayat al-dunya. But at the same time, a child is a blessing. The Quran also says, Innama amwalakum wa awladakum fitna. Your wealth and your children are a trial from us. Notice that sometimes a child is a blessing. Sometimes a child is a trial for you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why the story of Prophet Nuh, he had children who were blessings and a child who was a trial. Let's examine the story. Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, as you know, is one of the arch prophets of Islam and Christianity. In the Bible, we find that the Prophet Nuh's name is mentioned on numerous occasions. And until today, his story is recounted. Recently, you hear of the film Evan Almighty, where someone comes and faces a similar situation to the biblical as well as the Quranic story. You find that within the Bible, his story is mentioned. Although his depiction in the Bible is different from that of the Quran. His depiction in the Bible is that of whom? Is that of a prophet of God who is able to become a drunkard. Because in the Bible, there is the lines where he actually becomes drunk. And the Bible describes exactly how he became drunk in the vineyard. Whereas the Quran, of course, would never lower a prophet of God to such a level. Why? Because the philosophy of the Quran is that the prophets of God are the beacons of light on earth. They are the exemplars for the human being. When they tell you about how to live your life, They are the prime examples as to how someone should live their life. If now you come and tell me that I should be someone who is a good human being, then I look at you and I find that you are a drunkard, I cannot believe everything that you say. I begin to question your character, because we human beings have, of course, a tendency, if we see a white piece of paper and there's a black dot, we'll never focus on the white. We'll say, why is there a black dot? And likewise here, in the Bible it says he was a drunkard. And that's why academics who say the Quran is a copy of the Bible, here's one major difference. That the error-free, the infallibles in the Quran are not so infallible in the Bible. Had the Quran been a copy, the Quran would have said that Nuh is a drunkard as well. But the Quran describes Nuh as being one of God's arch-prophets. A prophet who brought a revelation towards the people. Because we see that the arch-prophets being Nuh, Adam, Nuh, Ibrahim, Musa, Isa, and our holy prophet Muhammad. We look at each one of them and what do we find? We find that each one of them is seen as being an arch-prophet. The prophet Nuh, his original name was Abdul Ghaffar. And he was a carpenter by trade. And he was in and around the people of Iraq. Not the easiest people to deal with. And he had to try and bring them towards the religion. At the beginning, these people were, of course, very pure people. They were monotheists, worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the way it should be. And these people had 5 personalities who they used to revere more than any other. And their names are mentioned in Surah 71 of the Quran. Because you know, there is a surah in the Quran called Surah Nuh. There's a surah named after him. There are 6 surahs in the Quran which speak about him. Nuh and Shu'ara and A'raf and Qamar and Hud. All of these speak about him. But Surah Nuh mentions that there were 5 personalities living in Iraq at the time who were highly revered by the people of Nuh. Who were they? Wadda, Sawa'a, Ya'uq, Yaghutha, and Nasra. These 5 were personalities who were revered. What the people did when they died, they made statues of them. They made statues because you know in many countries, even until today, when a leader dies, people leave a remnants of the leader, a statue which honors them. They made statues for these 5, but then suddenly not only did they make statues, they started bowing before these 5. They started actually beginning to worship these 5. Prophet Nuh came towards the people. He said to them, "O people, this which you are doing is not accepted. As in when you are a monotheist, you don't make images of God, nor should you be making images of people who you bow down towards." They said to him, "We will do that which we want to do. And you are no one to change us." He replied back to them by saying, "But the origin of Tawheed is that there is no way a human being can be worshipped." They said to him, "Why is it that we should follow you? Who do you have who listens to you?" He replied by saying, "I have a number of people, not a great number, but a small number who are following me." They turned around to him and they said, "What? The weak or the rich?" And the reply was, "Well, it was the poorer people." They straight away said, "If it's the poorer, we don't want to follow." Because the human being has a tendency. When he hears the rich are all going towards a direction, he bows down completely. When he hears the poor are following a direction, automatically he says, "Forget it, I'm not interested." However much he tried, they would not listen. The Quran describes what they would do. جَعَلُوا أَصَابِعَهُمْ فِي آذَانِهِمْ. They got their fingers and they put their fingers in their ears. وَاسْتَغْشَوْا ثِيَابَهُمْ. And they picked up their clothing and they covered themselves with it. And they remained arrogant. Do you know how many years he persisted with these people? 950 years. 950 years he persisted according to the Quran with these people. And that is of course a reply to those who say a human being cannot live that long. Because you know there are people until today who will come forward and say, "Your Imam, you say he's 1,100 years old. How does this work?" Well, Allah says Nabi Nuh lived until 3,000 years of age. So if Nabi Nuh can live this long, why couldn't Allah make the Imam of Al Muhammad live that long as well? We find he lived that long, yet however much he tried, they wouldn't listen. The hadith tell us that they pelted him with stones. When he'd preach to them, they'd pelt him with stones. Until one day all the stones that covered him, the hadith says Jibreel had to come and remove the stones so that he could actually emerge. He said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, "Ya Allah, I've tried to preach to them for 950 years. Yet they do not listen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept telling him, persist. If one of them changes, then you've changed the whole of humanity. It's ironic when you read the story of Prophet Yunus. Prophet Yunus, after 33 years, asked Allah, Ya Allah, these people of Iraq are difficult to deal with. However much we try, they don't listen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, take an example from your brother Nuh. 33 years and you have now come to me. He lasted 950 with them. That's how patient he remained until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him. He said, look, I will give them warnings through punishments. Hopefully this will change them. The first thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did, he stopped rain coming down amongst the people of Nuh. When he stopped the rain, he thought surely now they're going to turn around and they're going to say that the rain is a sign for us. They simply turned around to him and they said, Nuh, is that all your Lord can do? Stop rain from coming to us? There are other times when rain has stopped and we'll be patient. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stopped their abilities to have children. When this happened, again they turn around. He's stopping our abilities to have children. We'll persist in worshipping that which we worship until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him what? Until he told him now there will be a punishment. What is it? There will be a flood towards these people. Notice Allah does not punish a group of people unless they have been given a warning. If after all the signs they do not listen, then a punishment is sent. He said, I'm going to send a flood. Nabi Nuh, when he heard there's going to be a flood, he began to build an ark. Where was he building this ark? Next to Masjid al-Kufa. Because Nabi Nuh, as you know, is buried next to Ali ibn Abi Talib. That's why those of you who've been to Najaf al-Ashraf will see, next to Amir al-Mu'mineen, Nabi Nuh is buried. Even Imam al-Hasan narrates, that's when my father was dying. He said to me, my son Hassan, there is a grave which has been dug for me. When you go there, bury me in that grave. He said, when I went there, I saw on the grave, it was written for the Abid Salih Ali ibn Abi Talib. Dug by whom? Dug by his brother Nuh alayhi salam. You find that this area was an area of great history. Even one of the companions of our sixth Imam says, our sixth Imam was once riding his horse in Kufa. When he was riding his horse, he went past Kunasa Square. When he went past Kunasa Square, what happened? He saw Kunasa Square and he said, my relative Muslim ibn Aqil was killed over here. And my uncle Zayd, you know there are the Zaydi Shia around the world. My uncle Zayd was executed here. He says he then continued walking until he on his horse until he came off his horse. I said to him, why have you come off your horse? He said, out of respect of where Masjid al-Kufa originally was. So I said, what do you mean? He said, Masjid al-Kufa was built by Prophet Adam alayhi salam. Adam is buried there. Built by Prophet Adam. Then the flood of Nuh moved it slightly. Then after that, Kisra of Persia tried to move it until Ziyad ibn Abi made it remain in that position where it is. So he said, out of respect, Nabi Nuh, what did he do? He started to gather the community together. Some people ask, was there another community? Most of the scholars say, no, there wasn't another community. Why? The reason he was gathering this community, if there was another community, he doesn't have to take with him all the animals. He doesn't have to take with him all the humans. If there was another. But no, he has to take this community because this is the only community. Who does he expect to join him? He expects his family to join him. Yet what a surprise he came in for. And what a surprise we are to come in for. The first person who didn't join him on his ark was whom? Was his wife. That's why in Surah 66 of the Quran, verse number 10, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, ضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا لِلَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا امْرَأَةْ نُوحٍ وَامْرَأَةْ لُوطٍ. Allah says, I have given an example for those who disbelieve. The wife of Nuh and the wife of Lut. They were married to prophets of God, but they died as disbelievers. The criteria is what? That just because you're married to a prophet of God, it doesn't mean you'll die as a believer in God. That principle remains from the time of Nuh until the time of Rasulullah. If you are married to any prophet, it does not necessarily mean heaven is waiting for you because of your marriage to a prophet of God. Because Allah in the Quran says, the wife of Nuh, the wife of Lut, both died as kuffar. Did the fact that they were married to a prophet means he could carry them with him to Jannah? No. Because everybody on the Day of Judgment, there is no such thing anymore as relation. You stand for the actions that you performed. Even Allah tells the wives of Rasulullah, Ya nisa al-nabi, man ya'ti min kunna bifahishatin mubayyinatin yudha'af laha al-'adhab ضعفين. O wives of the Prophet, whoever comes out from you in a public piece of indecency will punish you double the punishment. So even the wives of Rasulullah, that is a criteria for them. His wife didn't join him. Why didn't she join him? What was her role? She used to go behind his back and inform the idol worshippers of his actions. A good wife never lets her secrets out of her home. What's in the home remains in the home. Barring the extreme cases, what's in the home should not be public knowledge for everybody unless it goes against the religion of Islam. This lady was leaving the house and she would be telling the idol worshippers, this is his plan A, this is his plan B, this is his plan C. And she'd mix with people who are not mahram to her. Those who are not mahram, she'd go in their company, sit with them, enjoy their company, and then come back home. Number one. Number two, but the person who he didn't expect to leave him was his son. Because Nabi Nuh had 4 sons and 1 daughter. And so he thought all of them would join him where? All of them would join him on the ark. Unfortunately, his son didn't join him. When his son didn't join him, Nabi Nuh said to him, why are you not joining me? He replied, what is it? There's a flood which is coming. I'll go on the top of the mountain. The mountain will protect me from the flood. You see, Nabi Nuh was in a precarious situation. Why? Because he's thinking Allah has promised that my family, my ahl, would be protected. This is my son. He said, Ya Allah, didn't you say my family would be protected? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replied to him, قَالَ يَا نُوحُ إِنَّهُ لَيْسَ مِنْ أَهْلِكَ إِنَّهُ عَمَلٌ غَيْرُ صَالِحٍ. O Nuh, he is not from your ahl. He is a bad act, a bad deed. I'd like to just look at this verse for a couple of moments. It's very important. Ya Nuh, innahu laysa min ahlik. Ahl here. What does it mean? The scholars have 3 different interpretations. What does Allah mean when he tells Prophet Nuh, this son of yours is not of your ahl anymore? The first reason the scholars give is they say the word ahl here means what? Allah is telling Nuh, he is not of your family. He's the illegitimate son of your wife. Because they say that his wife, he wasn't married to just one wife. He was married to another wife. They say that that wife, the one who Allah says is a kafir, she had an illegitimate relationship. The son who emerged was this one. So when Allah said, Ya Nuh, innahu laysa min ahlik, it means he's not of your family who are legitimate. He is illegitimate. We reject this opinion. Why? Because this whole idea that somebody who's from an illegitimate birth always has to be a bad human being, that's not accepted in the religion of Islam. There are some who in their lectures from this very pulpit bring about the idea, if a person is not from an illegitimate, if a person is from an illegitimate birth, that means that he will never love Al Muhammad. What do you mean? He'll never love Al Muhammad. There are people who are put in situations which wasn't their choice. When they are born, they come towards the religion of Islam. Sometimes they protect Al Muhammad better than those born into Al Muhammad. Therefore, when you come with this idea that illegitimate means bad, no. There are cases in history of certain people, without a doubt. Nobody knew their background. For example, Mukhtar, when he caught the 10 horse riders who trampled on the body of Abu Abdullah, he asked them, who's your fathers? They said, we don't know who our fathers are. We haven't got a clue. We know our mothers, but we don't know who our fathers are. There may be context to the hadith, but not a generalization. Number one. Number two, Ya Nuhu innahu laysa min ahlik. The second opinion is, he is not from your family who are good. You've got 4 sons and 1 daughter. 3 sons and 1 daughter are good. He is not of your ahl who are good. That's the second opinion. The third opinion, ahl means religion. Ya Nuhu, innahu laysa min ahlik means the family of your religion. He is not of your family. إِنَّهُ عَمَلٌ غَيْرُ صَالِحٍ. He is an amal. Tell me one thing. A human being is an amal or no? Amal means what? An act. The human, are we acts? No. But we represent acts in the way we behave. When Allah said, إِنَّهُ عَمَلٌ, an amal is not a human, but a human represents an act. The way a human being behaves is translated in their actions. Actions speak louder than words. Therefore, the verse said to Prophet Nuh, just because he's your son doesn't mean he's following the way you are following. I remember on a slight tangent here, Hajjaj bin Yusuf al-Thaqafi. Hajjaj one day read this verse. Ya Nuhu innahu laysa min ahlik, innahu amalun ghayra salih. When he read it, he looked at the scholars who were around him in Kufa. He said, I want to ask you a question. Is it amalun ghayra salih or amalin ghayru salih? At that moment the scholars said, we don't know. It could be amalun, it could be amalin. He said, go to Masjid al-Kufa and just find me someone to clarify this for me. You know, when the soldiers of Hajjaj walk into Masjid al-Kufa, many people straight away get scared because they know execution could be around the corner any second. It's not far away. So when these soldiers walked in, they said, we're looking for a scholar. Suddenly one person said, I've never read the Quran in my life. Another one said, I don't even know if I'm a Muslim today. A third one. Until they said, well, if all of you are running away, you over there, come here. And they took him. He said, I've never read the book in my life. I don't know. Amalun, amalin, whatever he decides, I agree with. But they took him. They brought him to Hajjaj's palace. Hajjaj had sent them out, but he decided he was bored in the palace. He went out. Here you've got the soldiers looking at each other saying, he told us to go and get someone, and now he's gone out. What do we do? If we take this person back, then he's going to say, why didn't you bring him? If we leave him here, then he's going to say to us, why have you left someone here? I'm not interested anymore. So they said, let's put him in prison. Imagine the poor person, what he's going through. He's thinking, I woke up this morning to go to the mosque. I've now been seen as a scholar of tafsir. Now I've been put in prison. So he was put in prison. 6 months he was left in the prison of Hajjaj. Until one day Hajjaj said, I want to investigate my prisons. They said to him, come, let's go. When he went to investigate, he looked around and he saw someone there. He saw the person. He said, why are you in prison? He said, because of Prophet Nuh alayhi salam. He said, what do you mean, Prophet Nuh? You trying to make fun of me? He said, no, I'm not trying to make fun of you. But your soldiers took me from the mosque saying, is the verse, إِنَّهُ عَمَلٌ غَيْرُ صَالِحٍ? Or is it, إِنَّهُ عَمَلٍ غَيْرُ صَالِحٍ? All of a sudden I found myself in prison. And then Hajjaj said, okay, get the guy out of prison. Let him go now. Here you find that the verse was used later on in context. But the question emerges here. Do unreligious children come out from religious families? Because Prophet Nuh is a religious figure, but his child comes out unreligious. The question that has to be asked is it an equation that religious children only come out from religious families? And that unreligious children only come out from unreligious families? Never. Not in this religion, the religion of Islam. The religion of Islam says there's no equation. You may be a religious person, your children may come out as a trial for you in your life. They may come out unreligious, and you may be an unreligious person, and your children may come out religious. As in, I get surprised sometimes when people hear the sons or the daughters of religious families performing an act. People straight away will say, but they're from religious families. Is Prophet Nuh's son not from a religious family? Prophet Adam is not a religious family. Prophet Yusuf is not a religious family. Yet their children came out unreligious. Likewise, you may have a really unreligious family, but their children come out religious. The question is, why do children sometimes come out unreligious? Why is it? As in, why in this story and in other stories do we find that there are children who come out not very religious? There are a number of reasons which are important for us to ponder on. The first reason why this child, the son of Nuh, came out unreligious from a religious family was because the mother and father were on completely different wavelengths. Sometimes you find the mother and father have got two completely different visions of life. The father wants to be the most religious person, wants to take the children towards the closeness towards the message of Islam, wants them to be trained under the right teachings. Sometimes you find the mother is not interested in anything but what film did the children watch, and what's the latest thing out which the children are listening to, and being soft with the children. Sometimes it's the other way around. A mother is crying her heart, saying these children have to become religious. The father replies by saying, let them make their mistakes, they'll learn by themselves. When there is a contradiction between the mother and the father, then no, the children are going to be in disarray. You have a father who says the children have to wear hijab now. Sometimes I see you as a mother concentrating more on them brushing their teeth than on them wearing the hijab of Al Muhammad. And then you have a mother who turns around and says that let her wear when she's ready. When she's ready, she'll wear. Who do you think the daughter will side with? The father or the mother? The daughter will stick next to the mother and say to her mom, keep talking, because the way you talk is nice. The mother may come and say, music is haram. None of the children listen. The father's the first to listen to music in his car. Contradiction. When a child grows up in a family of contradictions, then you find that that child begins to be bewildered. Whose side do I take, mom or dad? Dad's cousin is getting married. The wedding is going to have music. The dad says we have to go because he's our cousin. Yes, but dad, music is haram in Islam. We can't sit in such a gathering. He's our cousin. The mother tells the children music is haram. There is a clash at home. The children get in disarray. Do we follow our mother or do we follow our father? All of these scenarios exist in the Islamic world until today. The father says the girl should not be allowed to be independent, driving out late nights and coming home. The mother replies by saying, let her go. She'll learn and she'll come back. It's too late later on. She'll never come back. But there's a disarray in the vision. And when there's a disarray in the vision, do not be surprised if the children at home watch and they become bewildered. In the story of Prophet Nuh, Nuh is religious, but his wife isn't. The son takes the excuse of the wife and say in the same way, my mother isn't very religious. Why should I be religious as well? Whereas the husband and the wife have to make it clear that our visions in life have to be similar. Not exactly the same, but make sure they apply by the principles of Sharia. For example, you find the famous, you may find a wife who tells the children, don't gossip about the community, don't backbite about the community, it's not good. The child then an hour later sees the mother sitting with her sister speaking for 3 hours about the whole community. When a child watches this, a child looks and says, they are telling me how to be religious, they themselves don't act that which they preach to me. A father tells the children, go and read books about Islam. The children turn around and say, Dad, we've never seen you read a book in your life, let alone books about Islam. That type of upbringing will result in children who come out as unreligious, number one. Number two, our fourth Imam says that the children have rights. If these rights are not observed, then do not be surprised if your children come out unreligious. What's the first right of a child in Islam? That you give them a good name. The first right. Today, unfortunately, Asghar became Oscar, Ja'far became Jeffrey, Muhammad, God knows what that's become. Many different versions are available on the internet for you to buy and subscribe to. You find that the names have all changed. Why? There are some communities, would you believe, in the Islamic world who even left the Islamic names. When they name their baby, they try and think, if I name the baby this name, it's similar to the English name, so let's have that baby's name. Our names are a pride for us. When Rasulullah came in Arabia, what did Rasulullah do? When Rasulullah came, he saw some people who had named their children the most unbelievable names. For example, he met one family, what's your child's name? Shaitan. There's no other name? Shaitan? Yes, Shaitan. And you can imagine, like, if this person goes to school, John, yes, Steve, yes, Muhammad, yes. Satan, are you here? Another family had named their son Zalim, the oppressive one. You have a house of shaitan and oppression, and what other things do you need in this house? People used to give names like that. Rasulullah would come and he'd say, don't give your children names like this. Even the second Khalifa had named his daughter Asiyah. Now this is something of a misconception. There are many in our communities who say, we don't name Asiyah because Asiyah, Pharaoh's wife, it means sinful. No, 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 no. That's Asiyah. Asiyah, Pharaoh's wife, with an alif and a sin is permissible. Asiyah is Ayn and Sad. That means sinful. There's a difference. There's alif and sin, and there's Ayn and Sad. Ayn and Sad, Asiyah, the second Khalifa had named his daughter Asiyah, the sinful one. Imagine you want to bring up your daughter, her name's the sinful one. How's she ever going to become religious if she's called sinful from the first day of her life? Until he came to him, he said to him, oh Ammar ibn al-Khattab, don't name your child this name. Give another name. Rasulullah would encourage, the first right of the child is that you give them a good name. Why? Psychologically, why? Why would it affect them later on? Because if I'm named Muhammad, I will behave like Muhammad. If I am named Ali, I will live like Ali. If I am named Ja'far, I have to uphold the principles of Ja'far. If I am named Fatima, do I look like a Fatima when I walk in the street? If I am named Zainab, am I honoring that lady who sacrificed everything in the court of Yazid? When you hold a name, you are holding responsibility. Imam al-Sadiq one day saw this man with his son. His son was called Muhammad. Imam al-Sadiq, as soon as he heard that name, he went down and he kissed the hands of the son. The man looked at him and he said, Imam, you are the Imam of our time. You kiss the son. You kiss the hand of my son. He replied, whenever you hear the name Muhammad, you should honor the name Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad wa Allahumma salli. Then he said, when your son is named Muhammad, make sure he honors Muhammad in his life. Can you imagine in the Western society, if there are Muhammads inhaling drugs, if there are Muhammads in illegitimate relationships, can you imagine when someone sees Muhammad who's involved in fraud, what would they think of Rasulullah? Even the Imam himself, there are narrations which say, a man went to Sham. When he went to Sham, every house he went to, he didn't hear the names Hassan and Hussein. Never heard their names. He said until he went to his friend's house, when he entered his friend's house, he said he was wondering in his head, nobody's called Hassan and Hussein, but he knew his friend has children. All of a sudden his friend called out, Hassan, Hussein, come here next to me. So when they came, the man looked at him and he said, I'm happy, alhamdulillah, that you've named your sons after the grandsons of Rasulullah. He said, why are you happy? He said, because you've named them after the grandsons. He said, the only reason I've named them these names is that when I get angry with them, I can send my curses on Hassan and my curses on Hussein. Do you know Muawiyah, when he met Ibn Abbas and he found out he named his son Ali, became angry at him? These names protected this religion. Those people who died before you were beheaded on their way to honoring this religion. They kept their names to make sure nobody forgets these personalities. Yet you find their followers today bringing names no human being has ever heard of. Bringing names into the communities like this. A name is a gift, but it's a right of a child, number one. Number two, the second right of the child in Islam is that you teach them the akhlaq of Al Muhammad. That's a right for a child. Because you have some families, their parents instill the worst of morality in them. Some people will turn around and say, no, Muslim families instill the best morality. When a father tells his children, you're the best and no one in the mosque is better than you, that child is going to be the most arrogant person when he grows up. And I've met some people who they walk and the word arrogance is labeled right behind them. Why? Meet their dads and sometimes you'll know why. Sometimes you'll know why when you meet their parents. Because their parents instill in them this idea that you are the best. Nobody comes near you. Talk only to a specific group of people, not to everyone. Whereas you look at someone like our fifth Imam, the way his akhlaq was. That Imam Zayn al-Abidin had such a relationship with Imam al-Baqir that from a young age, you know, both of them were at Karbala. Imam Zayn al-Abidin was about 23, 24. Imam al-Baqir was a few years old. He brought him up in a way where akhlaq was the essence of his upbringing. He wanted Imam al-Baqir to walk around so that when people look at him and say, this is definitely the grandson of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. Once Imam al-Baqir was walking, someone came towards him, he said to him, Baqar. Baqar means what? Cow. He said to him, I'm sorry, my name is Baqir. He said, I heard your mother had bad breath. He looked at him again. He then said to him, I heard your mother was a slave girl. Imam al-Baqir has two options here. He could be like some of his followers today, reply back with violence, nothing else, no patience. Or he could be like how he wanted his followers to be. Listen to his reply. He said, if my mother is as you described her, may Allah forgive her on the day of judgment. And if you are wrong in the way you've described her, may Allah forgive you on the day of judgment. Look at that. Simple, but effective. He didn't want to produce children walking around stubborn, rude, arrogant. No. Humility was brought up in this house, and you found the children would be moving around one way and the other with respect. The third right of a child, according to the Imam, is what? Is that you communicate with your children. And that's the greatest right. That you communicate with your children, especially in the 21st century. Why? Because children want three things. They want attention, and they want belonging, and they want encouragement. If you give a child these three, they will be closer to you than anyone else. Because today, you find unfortunately many fathers and sons, many fathers and daughters, mothers and sons, mothers and daughters, don't have encouragement within them. Encouragement is the basis of this religion. Rasulullah used to be encouraged by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rasulullah, many times Allah had to encourage him. You know in Surah Yasin, many of you have read the verse, فَلَا يَحْزُنْكَ قَوْلَهُمْ. Don't let their words grieve you, Muhammad. Why did Allah say this to him? It's as if Allah is bringing up Rasulullah. He's telling him, don't let their words grieve you. Continue. Likewise, a parent has to encourage the child. If the child is not doing too well religiously, don't make it clear that all my other children are good, but that one's the black sheep. Because even the story of Yaqub and Yusuf, such a thing could happen where you show attention to one ahead of the other. No. Encourage them to join the community. Some will turn around and say, why should I join the community? All they do is backbite. All they do is gossip. Nabi Musa said that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, Ya Allah, my community, all they do is they backbite me. All they do is gossip about me. Ya Allah, will you not stop them? Do you know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replied? I have not given myself that honor. They talk about me. They blaspheme me. Have I stopped them? No. So why do you think you should have the right of people stopping when they attack me and I am your creator? Encouragement, number one. Number two, make them feel a sense of what? A sense of attention. Your daughter is not getting married. Don't keep sitting back there thinking someone's going to come. Get up and maybe you make a move on behalf of your daughter. Prophet Shu'aib had two daughters, Leah and Safura. One of them came to him and said, oh father, this man, Musa, is a trustworthy man. He said, no problem. You want to marry him? Yes, I'll take the proposal to him and we'll get married. That attention makes a whole difference from a daughter who feels her father or mother are not in her life. From a son who feels that his father or the mother are not in the life. Belonging means what? Amir al-Mu'mineen used to say, bring your children up in a different way from the way you are brought up. In the sense that in your generation, some things were seen as taboo. In theirs, it's not taboo. You were brought up in a country where everybody around you was the same sect of Islam. They are in a country where forget Islam. They are with people of a different religion. You were brought up living one particular sport. They are brought up loving another sport. The sense of belonging is when you tell your son or your daughter, let you come and express your opinions to me about every area, be it your personal desires in your life, related to the different types of marriages in Islam, be it to what you want to study, be it to your opinions about the community. There is a need for dialogue to exist between them. Otherwise, the rights of the child are not there. And when there is no dialogue at home, do not be surprised if your child comes out unreligious. Amir al-Mu'mineen used to say, the heart of a youth is like an uncultivated piece of land. Whatever you throw on it, it accepts. He said to his son Hassan, I try to mold your heart before it hardened, in order that you were able to learn from my examples and apply them to your life. Your children, their hearts need cultivation. The only way is by attention, belonging, and encouragement. That's why in Islam, there are some children who are born in their parents' eye as a blessing, yet later on they became a trial for their parents. Then there are some children who are born as a trial, later on they became a blessing for their parents. Look at this. In terms of a child who was born as a blessing for his parents, but later on became a trial, you have somebody like Abdullah ibn Zubair. Zubair and Talha fought Ali ibn Abi Talib in the Battle of Jamal. Do you know Zubair was one of the only men who stood alongside Ali ibn Abi Talib when they took his Khilafah? He was one of a few men who stood alongside him. He stayed friends with Ali ibn Abi Talib. Do you know who took him away? His son Abdullah. Were it not for his son, when his son was born, he thought the son was a blessing. By the time Zubair came to the Battle of Jamal, he recognized that this son has been a trial for me. Allah tested me with my son. I should have listened to Ali ibn Abi Talib. Instead, I've listened to my son who's encouraged me to fight Ali ibn Abi Talib. His son was born a blessing, but died as a trial for him. Then you have somebody like Mutawakkil al-Abbasi, the Khalifa Banu Abbas in the time of Imam al-Hadi. He had a son by the name of Muntasir. When his son was born, he thought he's a blessing, the best thing that's happened to his life. Yet this son Muntasir acted as a trial because he was killed by his own son. Because Mutawakkil used to have gatherings of abusing Ali ibn Abi Talib. His son came to him one day, he said, Dad, Ali ibn Abi Talib is our cousin, Banu Abbas. Why do you abuse him in this way? He said, it's none of your business. You've come from me, you don't say anything about that which I do. Muntasir could not believe his answer. He asked the Turkish soldiers to assassinate his father. There are some people, their children at the beginning were a blessing. Later on they become the biggest trial. Then there are others whose children at the beginning were a trial, and at the end they are a blessing for their parents. Notably the nephews of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Amongst them on the 10th of Muharram, Awn and Muhammad, the sons of Sayyida Zainab. Amongst them on the 10th of Muharram, the 7 sons of Imam al-Hasan, who fought alongside Abu Abdullah. These children were born as a trial for Al-Muhammad. Like Prophet Ismail was born as a trial for Ibrahim. But Ismail later on became a blessing for Ibrahim. Likewise, Awn and Muhammad and Qasim were all born at the same time, in the same generation. Was it an easy time? It was a difficult time. Why? Imam al-Hasan was in the last years of his life, because Qasim was only 3 years old when his father died. That means in Karbala, Qasim was no older than 14. And even other scholars say younger than that. And therefore you find that Qasim was born in the last few years of his father's life. Awn and Muhammad, they were born in the period where Imam Hassan was being attacked by Bani Umayyah. Sayyida Zainab, when she gave birth to Awn and Muhammad. And Farwa or Ramla, when she gave birth towards Qasim, they gave birth at times of a trial. But didn't these children act as a blessing on the 10th of Muharram? How many of us would love to have children like Awn and Muhammad? How many of us would love to have children like Qasim ibn al-Hasan? The words of these young men on the 10th of Muharram, they weren't older than 13, 14, all 3 of them. But the words of these young men, they cause an arrow to pierce your heart on a night like this. First and foremost, Awn and Muhammad. And I'm going to take you all the way in this Masa'ib to Medina tonight. Tonight, we're going to go to Sham and Medina. Because I want to tell you where Awn and Muhammad were, and I want to tell you where Qasim was as well. Prepare your hearts for tonight. Awn and Muhammad, their father didn't come to Karbala, Abdullah ibn Ja'far. He couldn't come. Reports say old age, blindness and so on. There's a difference of opinion. He couldn't come. He said to Abu Abdullah, he said, I cannot come, but Awn and Muhammad are my representatives. These sons of mine, I want them to sacrifice their lives for you, Abu Abdullah. On the night of the 10th of Muharram, their mother came towards them. Sayyida Zainab came towards them. She said, Awn and Muhammad, tomorrow the battle will ensue. I will be ashamed if your uncle Aba Abdullah is dead and you are alive. I want you to promise me that you will valiantly defend Aba Abdullah. They replied, Mother, it will be our honor to defend Aba Abdullah. The next morning when the battle ensued, Sayyidah Zainab looked around. She saw Awn and Muhammad there in front of her. She said to them, my sons, why haven't you gone towards Aba Abdullah? The reply was what? The reply was, because Aba Abdullah does not allow us to join him. Aba Abdullah says we are too young to join him. We have been pleading with him to go out on the battlefield. Sayyidah Zainab went towards Aba Abdullah. When she went towards Aba Abdullah, she said to him, Ya Aba Abdullah, do you remember on the day of Saffin when our brother Abu Fadl al-Abbas came out on the battlefield? Do you remember the smile of your father Ali ibn Abi Talib when he saw Abu Fadl coming out at such a young age? He replied, yes, I do. She said, Ya Aba Abdullah, then why do you not allow Awn and Muhammad to defend them? He looked at her. She suddenly began to cry in front of him. He said to her, Sayyidah Zainab, why do you cry? She says, because I don't want to be embarrassed when I meet my mother Fatima al-Zahra. And that I saw Layla giving Ali al-Akbar away, and I saw al-Banin giving away her sons, and I saw Farwa giving away her sons. Ya Aba Abdullah, let me give away my sons. He called Awn and Muhammad towards him. When he called them towards him, they came towards him. He looked at them. They said to him, oh uncle, allow us to fight. And then they said, we have in our veins the blood of Ja'far and the blood of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He said to them, he embraced them, he hugged them, he began to cry. They came out on the battlefield. The opposition looked at them. Narrations say they were coming out. The opposition was saying, who's these young children coming out to fight us? When they came out, both of them as a pair, they were defending each other. When someone would come and strike Awn, Muhammad would come and defend him. When someone would come and strike Muhammad, Awn would come and defend him. Every time they'd turn around, they'd say, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. When they turn around, they'd look for their uncle Abu Fadl. Why? Because they were brought up as swordsmen by Abu Fadl. They wanted to see if their uncle was proud of them. Until Umar ibn Sa'ad said, surround them from every angle. Don't fight them one-on-one. Do you not know these are the grandsons of Ali ibn Abi Talib? They began to surround them from every angle. Eventually they come and they began to pierce their bodies when they were on the ground. They called out, Ya Aba Abdullah, come towards us. When Aba Abdullah approached them, the final words Awn said to him before he died, he said, Aba Abdullah, tell my mother Sayyidah Zainab, I didn't go towards the river to drink any water. I stayed thirsty defending her. He acknowledged this. When he went back to tell Sayyidah Zainab, do you know what she did? She didn't cry. And I will tell you why later she didn't cry. All she did, she went down in sujood. She thanked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gave her children like this. Then it came the turn of Qasim ibn al-Hasan. Qasim ibn al-Hasan, he had witnessed the death of his father Imam al-Hasan. As you know, Imam al-Hasan was poisoned by the poison of Bani Umayyah. Qasim remembers his father vomiting out his liver into the bowl that was in front of him. This Qasim, on the night of the 10th of Muharram, what did he do? On the night of the 10th of Muharram, he came to Aba Abdullah. He said, Ya Aba Abdullah, are we all gonna die tomorrow? Aba Abdullah looked at him and he said to him, Qasim, how do you view death? He said, Ya Aba Abdullah, death is sweeter than honey. When Aba Abdullah heard this, he began to cry. He embraced Qasim. He began to cry next to him. But he said to him, Qasim, you are the wasiyah of your father. You are the amana of your father. I have been ordered to look after you. I can't let you go out and fight. Imagine this young Qasim cries because he can't serve Aba Abdullah. The next day, Qasim came again.
Hassan, he said, Abu Abdullah, please let me die for you. It would be my honor. Abu Abdullah again said to him, there are ladies in the tent, Qasim. Go back and defend these ladies. Qasim returned back to the tent and he entered upon that tent. When he entered, he saw Sayyida Zainab and his mother sitting down. His mother looked at him. She said to him, my darling Qasim, why do you cry? He replied to her mother, I went to my uncle Abu Abdullah, but he doesn't allow me to defend him. She gave him a letter which she said he had to give to Abu Abdullah. He went towards Abu Abdullah, he showed him the letter. Abu Abdullah looked at this letter. Do you know what he looked at? It said, Ya Abu Abdullah, this is from your brother Imam al-Hassan. I will not be able to be at Karbala to defend you, but Qasim, my son, is my representative, so please allow him to sacrifice himself for you. Abu Abdullah, when he looked at Qasim, he remembered the years he grew up with his brother Hassan. Do you know what he did? He placed a turban on Qasim's head. He then said to Qasim, go to your auntie Zainab with this turban. When Qasim entered the tent with the turban, his auntie looked at him and she said, is that Qasim or is that his father Hassan who's walked into it? She began to remember Imam Hassan. He came out on the battlefield. They say his sword was too big for him. They say his armor was too big for him. He came out on the battlefield. It's narrated that he killed 35 of the opposition. He continued. All of a sudden, a man by the name of Ammar ibn Sa'ad al-Azdi looked at the soldiers of Ibn Sa'ad. He said, I'm the one who's going to kill this young man. Leave him to me. He came towards him. He struck him on his hand was pierced into two. He then fell on the ground. When he fell on the ground, he called out, Aghisni ya Abu Abdullah. My uncle Abu Abdullah, I ask you to come towards me and help me. Abu Abdullah ran towards Qasim. He ran, he tried to remove those people. But you know what happened to Qasim? The horses began to trample on his body. One direction and another. Abu Abdullah came near his body. He tried to lift the hand was pierced into two. He tried to lift the chest was pierced into two. And this moment Abu Abdullah said, it hurts me, oh my nephew, that you call me and I couldn't help you, or that I have come near you and that I couldn't support you. Ammar Abdullah, this moment, brothers and sisters, he picked up a robe. Why? Because Qasim's body was all over the ground in Karbala. He didn't know where to begin, from the left. He didn't know whether to begin from the right. He picked up the robe and he carried his body back. He then called out towards the camp. He said, Sayyida Zainab, where are you? Come out, Qasim is with me. When Sayyida Zainab came out, she said, Ya Abu Abdullah, where is Qasim? I cannot see him. Abu Abdullah said to her, oh Sayyida Zainab, do you see that robe over there? She said, yes. He said, his body pieces, I collected them in that robe. Narrations say to us that these ladies were taken towards Kufa and then they were taken towards Sham. Imagine how hard it was that these ladies saw their children's heads on the spears. Sayyida Zainab would see Aoun and Muhammad's head on the spears. Farwa would see Qasim's head on the spear. It was difficult when they entered Sham. Yazid was married to a lady by the name of Hind. Hind originally was a servant in the house of whom? In the house of Ali ibn Abi Talib. She had seen these young men grow up one by one. Then she was in the house of Imam al-Hassan. When Imam al-Hassan died, she went to the house of Muawiyah, who gave her to Yazid. She was there. Her servant came towards her. He said to her, oh Hind, you have to come out. She said, why? The servant said, because there is a group of prisoners who have come. I do not know who they are. I do not know where they have come from. You know where I am going, brothers and sisters. You have to dress up. Yazid said, you have to come out and welcome them. She got dressed up. She came out. She came and sat on her throne. Sayyida Zainab looked towards Kulthum and she looked towards Farwa. She said to them, do you recognize who that lady is who's sitting there? Kulthum said, I don't recognize who she is. Sayyidah Zainab said, do you remember when we were younger, our servant Hindu served us in our house? Kulthum said, yes. She said, that is Hind there. Hind was sitting on her throne. Hind looked at them. She saw them, but she couldn't recognize them. It had been many years since she had seen them. She looked at them one by one. Then what did she say? She said to them, excuse me, may I ask you, where are you from? Sayyidah Zainab replied to her. She said to her, we are a family from Medina. Hind at that moment got off her throne. She sat on the ground. She said, welcome to the people of Medina. Sayyidah Zainab said to her, why do you say that? She said, I used to serve in a house of a family in Medina. She said to her, which family? She said, I served in the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. And that moment Sayyidah Zainab said, did you? She said, yes, I did. And then Hind said to her, may I ask you about the people of the house? Sayyidah Zainab said to her, who do you want to ask about? She said, tell me, where is Abu Fadl al-Abbas? I'd love to see him now. And Sayyidah Zainab looked at the head of Abu Fadl on the spear. She said, do you see that head? She said, yes, I do. She said, that's the head of Abu Fadl. They killed him. Then she said to her, tell me, where is Kulthum? I'd like to see her. She said, that is Kulthum there. She then said to her, tell me, where is Abu Abdullah? I haven't seen her. She said to her, that is Ammar Nakshawani is over there. Then the next line is the one that hurts. She said, tell me, where is Sayyidah Zainab? I'd love to say my salams to her. Sayyidah Zainab looked at her and she said, I am Sayyidah Zainab and that is my sons over there who you see. The final narration, we go towards Medina. Sayyidah Zainab didn't cry for Awn and Muhammad at Medina, nor at Kufa, nor at Sham, until she returned back to Medina. When she returned back, any mother, when she returns back to her house. She entered the house, she saw her husband, she started walking around the house, and then she saw 2 empty mattresses on the ground. She called out in the poetry of the poets, where are those sons who I brought up and fought for me? I would love to hug them and I'd love them to embrace me. Awn and Muhammad, I never cried because Abu Abdullah had nobody to support him. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. May Allah bless those tears. Those of you who are crying, may Allah bless your tears. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us on the path of Muhammad and Al Muhammad, to allow us to be amongst those sincere servants of Muhammad and Al Muhammad. Allow us to follow their example and allow us to raise our children with the rights of Muhammad and Al Muhammad. Raise your hands, brothers and sisters, and pray that on a night like this you receive the intercession of the Shaheed Qasim ibn al-Hasan and the Shaheed Awn and the Shaheed Muhammad. Ya Allah, allow our children and allow our sons to be following their example and take them as leaders. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. اللهم ارزقنا شفاعة الحسين يوم الورود وثبت لنا قدم صدق عندك مع الحسين وأصحابه الذين بذلوا مهجهم دون الحسين عليه السلام. As you know, today we had the youth program with the JSS. If there are more questions, inshallah, we endeavor to answer them. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the Surah Al-Fatiha, but before it, the loudest of salawat.